Hey everyone, and welcome to today's video where we're going to talk about hard surface modeling, and more precisely we're going to talk about the basics of modeling with Fusion 360. Now, if you've ever had to model a 3D model that's hard surface, you probably know that you can get a really decent result when you're doing your models in 3ds Max or Blender or Maya or pretty much any of your software that you're feeling comfortable with. But if you're gonna go ahead and compare those models with pure CAD models, well, they're never gonna hold up because nothing can be as clean as a CAD model. So that is one of the advantages you have when you're using Fusion, because Fusion spits out in the end a clean CAD model. And as an added bonus, you should know that whatever you model inside Fusion 360, you can later go ahead and export this thing and have it either be CNC milled, it can be milled in wood, plastic, or it can be even 3D printed. So by adding Fusion 360 to your skill set, you might open up some future job opportunities for yourself as well. All right, so the first thing that we're going to start is by the basics of what you're seeing in the screen whenever you open Fusion 360 for the first time. Provided this is the first time you're seeing the user interface of Fusion, and you've never worked with it, I'm just going to go over some of the more important things you might want to set up when you're working here. And the first thing that you always want to do is you want to make sure the units that you're working with are set up correctly to whatever it is that you want to create. Now, over here underneath where it says browser, you have document settings. If you open it up, here you have units. By clicking in here or change the active units, you can choose what you want to work. You can use centimeters, millimeters, meters, inches, or foot or feet. So I'm going to leave it in millimeters for me, but whatever you do or whatever you want to use, this is where you want to set it up. So that's the first thing. You always want to make sure that you're using the right units. Next thing is when you're in the workplace over here, you need to know how to navigate. Holding down the middle or the scroll button will let you pan around. Holding down shift with the middle mouse will let you rotate, and the middle mouse will simply let you zoom in and zoom out. Now, having said this, if you go down here where it says display settings and click on it, you have a couple of options here that you can change, but the one that I want to change here is my camera. Innately, when you start Fusion 360, the camera setting is always set up as orthographic, and this can be okay if you are accustomed to working with orthographic, or you can put on a perspective camera. In this case, it's going to be more like the camera you would see inside 3ds Max, but the problem with this is once you start sketching stuff, the problem with having a perspective camera shows up. So you have the option to go ahead and choose perspective with orthographic faces. What this means is you will keep the perspective camera, but once you go into drawing, it will switch over to orthographic camera. So I tend to choose this option when I'm working, but again, that's a preference depending on how you want to have your viewport. Next thing I want to turn off is going to be my grid. For now, I don't actually need it. So what I'm going to do is click over here where it says grid and snaps and just turn off the layout grid. This will remove it. So now we are greeted with a blank canvas. Now to make it easier to see what it is, we can just click over here where it says origin and unhide the origin. So this is the 000 point space as we have it in 3ds Max. So it's the same thing over here. We can see the blue, red, and green lines, and over here on the top right corner, you can see that the Y, X, and Z axes are the corresponding colors. We have the same exact cube that we have in 3ds Max. So if we click on any of those viewports, the camera will switch over to any of those views, and it's going to snap like that. So now we've gone over on the basics of the user interface. Let's take a look at the options here we have. Now we go over here, we have a couple of drop-down menus. We start off by the design, and all of these drop-down menus are different workspaces. This is the design in which we can create our designs. Actually, when you go over it, it gives you a really nice overview of what it is that you're trying to create. So this is the one where you basically do most of the models. Then you can switch over to generative design. Another one underneath goes for rendering. But honestly, though, even though rendering here is possible, the thing is that you're going to be much better off if you take your model into 3ds Max or your other software and render it out over there. But again, it can be done over here. As you can see, Fusion 360 does have its own rendering system, and if we open up on the side, we can see that in here it has a lot of presets for materials. But again, this is going to be something that we might take a look in a later video. Then underneath we have the workspace for the animation. You can also animate and see how these models would work with each other. You can simulate. Now this is where it gets to the point where this becomes more of an engineering tool than just a 3D modeling tool. Then underneath you have manufacture workspace, and this is where you basically teach your 3D printer how to do the manufacturing. And then last you have the drawings from design or from animation. But for now we're going to stick to design and see what we can create here, or how exactly does Fusion 360 deal with creation of 3D models. And actually, before we go on more deep into how to create stuff in here, there's one more aspect of this thing I want to show you guys, and that is how to save. And why is it very important to save as soon as you start? So basically, when you go over here and you click on save, this is what opens up. And now, everything that you do in Fusion 360 is saved in the cloud. So when you do this, if you click over here, it's going to give you different projects you've done. And if you click on new project, it's going to add a project. Let's call this thing YouTube projects. Click OK. Give it a second. It creates it. You go over here, and now on the side you can name your projects, or you can just click a folder and call this thing intro video. Okay, I just made a mistake because intro video, I added a bracket here. So enter, there we go. So now I have my folder. Go in here, name it intro video, and hit save. As soon as you do this, this is where it's going to show up. So now the main reason why it's very important that you save is that Fusion 360 has a nifty autosave. So in case Fusion does crash, because well, in the end this is Autodesk product and it does tend to crash from time to time, although with the newer versions it's much more or much less frequent than it used to be. But still, when it crashes, the auto save will save your model. So far we saw that Fusion can do a lot of different things and a lot of complex things. So let's see how it all starts. I'm going to go over in my create tab over here, and here I can see that I can create a bunch of different things. But where do I create them? Well, you need to start a sketch. So we can click over here where it says create sketch, and when you click on it, it's going to ask you where you want to create it. So you have to choose which part you want to create it. Let's go on the X and Y and just click here. As soon as you click here, now you can start drawing anything you want. So again, I can go over to create, and now you can see that I have a bunch of different or other options available to me that are made for drawing. So we have line, rectangle, circle, and anything else. Now, when I go over to rectangle, you can see that we have different types of rectangles in here. So depending on what you choose, let's go with a center rectangle. Now, when I go over here and I hover above the center point, you're going to see this blue box around it. It means it's snapped. So if I click and drag outwards and click again, I have my first rectangle created. Now, I'm going to go ahead and see what I can do here. The first thing that I can notice is right next under all of these lines, I have these little icons that are supposed to represent something. But if I select them, you can see over here it says it has a horizontal constraint. If I go over here, it has a parallel constraint. And generally, if I go over the entire thing, just mouse over, you're going to see that the borders are in black. Now, this means that this entire rectangle is well defined and can be used. But now let's see how we can change some of these parameters for this thing that we just created. If I go over down to create, we have an option here that says sketch dimensions. So if I click on it, I can click on any of these lines, click and drag out, and this will allow me to set the size of this size. So if, let's say, I go 50 millimeters, you can see this entire thing scaled upwards. Now, if I go ahead and click another one over here, let's say 20, we can see that we got this thing all defined, and we can continue using it. Now, how do we use it? So if I select this image or this face, you're going to see it's blue at the moment. So if I go over to the Modify tab, in here I have some options, or I can just right click on it and I can see the most logical options available here. So I have extrude, press, pull, and more or less that's about all I need for this. Since I have this highlighted, and this means that I can do some option, or I can try out some options or modifications to them. So I'm gonna go over to Modify, and here let's try out either the fillet or the chamfer. If I go with a chamfer, I'm gonna get a much more sharper corner. So I'm gonna click over here, and now I'm gonna continue clicking on edges. Once I'm inside the chamfer, you can see that how many edges have clicked. So if I continue clicking on more, it keeps adding them over here, as you can see. And let's add these two more. And now I can add in a value on how much I want to chamfer this. Let's try with 5 and see how that's gonna look. Right, 5 might be too much, so let's try 2 or even 1. All right, so 1 millimeter works quite well. Here you can also change the type. So you can have equal distances, 2 distances, and 2 distances is very useful if you wanna have a different amount depending on where it's gonna be. But in some cases, is over here, you cannot have them overlap because it's gonna be a problem. So I'm gonna leave it at 2 distances and click OK. So now, since we have our first box model, what I want to do now is I want to continue creating more details in this thing. And the way that I'm going to do this is I'm going to show you another thing, the shortcut menu. Whenever you press S on your keyboard, you have shortcuts. So this search button is again very similar to what you have in 3ds Max, and all of the options, like everything you can see in all of these menus, they're all available in there. For example, if I want to go ahead and create a sketch, I can go create a sketch, and when you're next to it, you can just click, and this will allow you to do whatever you want with this. Now, when you're creating a sketch, previously we created it on the plane that was the XY plane. Now I want to create another sketch over here on the front face of this box that we created. So once we do this, again, we are in the creation for the sketches. Now, another thing I do want to mention here is that on the lower left over here, this is your action bar, so to speak. So everything you've done in here can be seen, and you can backtrack. But again, we're going to see that thing in a later video. So for now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create one circle. So I'm going to go over circle, and you can see right next to it, if you press the C button, which is the shortcut for the circle, you can get it right away like this. But for now, I'm just gonna create, all right, just regular circle. Get over to the bottom here. Again, we can see that it's snapped on the bottom. So click and just drag out one value. Doesn't really matter how much or how big it is. So again, now I do want to go ahead and dimension this. And over here, I can see the D as dimension. So I'm going to start using those, and I'm going to start using the shortcuts. And it's always a good idea to start learning those shortcuts because they're very valuable and it's going to save you a lot of time. So if I go click on D and click over here, it's going to allow me to define how big I want this diameter to be. Now make sure that when you're creating something, you're actually reading the diameter and not the radius, because as you well know, radius goes double the diameter size. So let's try with a diameter of 5 millimeters and see how that's going to work. Okay, that's good enough. And I'm going to click on Finish Sketch. Or also, if you want to change something, just double click on this and maybe you can make it 8 and click on Finish Sketch. Okay, so now I have this thing over here. So what to do now is select it, hold down Shift and select the other option here as well. Right click and I can extrude, or I can go over here in my tools where it says I can use press pull option, which is going to allow me to move this thing around. But for now, I'm going to go with extrude and move it to the back side like this. Now you can see that when I move it in the negative, it's cutting through our already existing model. And over here in the extrude options, we have some parameters that we can choose. We have the distance. Again, we have what sort of an operation it's going to be. So if I will actually do want to cut it in, it's going to be cut. Otherwise, we can do intersect. You can make a new body or join two different models depending on how far they are from each other. But for now, I do want to keep this thing on cut. And instead of going for distance, what I can do is the direction here for one side, I can click and choose to go in two sides or choose to make it symmetric. But since there is nothing on this side, what I'm actually going to do is the extend type. Instead of distance, I'm just going to click on to all. So this is going to extend it all the way, and it's going to pass through the whole thing. So I'm just going to click on OK, and just like this, we cut off that lower piece of our model. And we can do the same thing again. Let's just do it really quickly. Click over here, C, to add in a couple of more circles. There we go. Now, D, let's give them some dimensions. Let's try 5, then 3, maybe 5, and another one that's going to be like 7 or 8. Okay, finish sketch, and the same thing that we did previously. Just hold the shift down, select all of these, extrude them negative, and just make sure that it goes all like this. Click OK, and there we go. Our model has been chamfered, has been extruded out, and the good thing about it is that you can again go over here, hold down shift, select all of these extra edges that we just got here, and we can fill it, or we can chamfer. Now for this one I'm actually going to use the fillet. Well, actually, let me just go back. I think I did not accept the extrude. So, all right, finish sketch, go to right click, extrude. All and OK. There you go. So now select these. Again, I can right click on it and hit it with fillet. Give it a value of something like 1. And there we go. We have this sort of a end result. All right, so for your first lesson in Autodesk Fusion 360, I think we're gonna cut it short here. We basically saw the very basics you want to learn when you're setting up your project, how to save it, how to set up your units, and how to do a quick sketch. In the future videos, we're gonna do a bit more about sketching and how to do a bit more modeling. But for now, I think we're gonna cut it short here. So I hope you guys had fun and you managed to learn some new skills out of this video. If you would like to support me, you can always click the join button, and the direct links will be in the description below. And always, the most helpful thing you can do is just click the like and subscribe buttons and comment below in the video. So as always, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye bye.